How's it going, guys? ShizuCats here, coming at you off a long hiatus to bring you guys a new deck profile for BanG featuring some of the cards from the recently released Morphonica trial deck. So this was released just last week, and since then I've been doing quite a bit of testing. I came out of my hole and I've been trying out some cool new things with some of the really neat cards from this trial deck. So I'm excited to share with you guys some of my deck building process and some of the strategies that I've incorporated into my deck. So let's get started. So this is the new 1-0 Mashiro combo. It basically has the same combo as Shizu from That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. On attack, if you have another music character and you have the book climax in the climax area, mill 2 and add up the levels of the 2 milled cards, then salvage up to 1 music character whose level is equal or lower than that number. It's a very simple, easy to use, and uninteractive combo. Just attack, mill 2, and you get a card. It's very similar to Yukina level 1 combo from Roselia trial deck, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, in that they're both on attack plussing combos, 5k power, and combo with book. But the two cards have some key differences. Yukina has the advantage of flexibility on the mill. You can mill anywhere from 1 to 4 cards, whereas Mashiro must always mill 2. This can be a bit of a detriment for Mashiro since you might mill yourself out of a good deck state, especially right after you refresh. This also means that Mashiro combo does basically nothing when you have 2 cards left in deck, because you're going to mill the last 2 and then not have anything to salvage. However, Mashiro has the advantage in selectivity. Whereas Yukina must choose from whatever is revealed, Mashiro is able to salvage based on whatever you mill, potentially giving you the selection of your entire waiting room. Another big advantage that the Mashiro combo has is actually in an entirely different card. This 1-0 event, also from the trial deck, lets you salvage a character based on the number of Mashiro combos that you have in waiting room. So if you have 1 Mashiro combo in waiting room, you can salvage a level 1 or lower music character. If you have 3 or more, you can salvage anything. This event is super strong in my opinion and just adds to the selectivity and consistency of the deck. Even if you have 0 Mashiros in waiting room, this card can still salvage level 0s. Also, this event is always able to salvage the Mashiro combo itself, since having a combo in waiting room means that you can salvage level 1 or lower. Between the level 1 combo Mashiro and this event, you have a lot of selectivity and it's very easy to find specific cards, especially when you're late in your deck rotation, which is great, because with these kinds of level 1 combos that mill, like Amelia or this combo, you will commonly find yourself using the combo to mill yourself down to 1 card in deck, so that you can get your first refresh before hitting level 2, while also allowing the climax that you played hit the waiting room right before you refresh. And when you mill yourself down to 1 this way, you'll have an entire waiting room full of cards that you'll get to choose from when you use your Mashiro combos. So I basically built the deck around Mashiro combo, so let's take a look at what I perceive to be the strengths and weaknesses of the combo, and how I built the deck to play to those strengths as well as supplement the weaknesses. For strengths, as previously mentioned, this deck is able to have a lot of selectivity and consistency. Additionally, this deck is able to go for multiple combo turns back to back very easily, by having Mashiro salvage more copies of herself, as well as the event being able to grab her for free. If you have a hand of, for example, 2 Mashiro, 1 event, 2 book climaxes, and you have additional copies of the Mashiro level 1 in waiting room, you can very easily go for back-to-back turns of double or even triple climax combo. For that reason, choosing the other climax to include in my deck was pretty easy, and I'm going to be running Pants in this deck, specifically Yukina level 3, one of my favorite climax combos in Weiss. An obvious weakness of Mashiro is her lack of power, both offensively and defensively. She only has 5k base power, and unlike Shizu from Slime, she doesn't gain any extra power when using the climax combo, which means that it's going to make her very hard to kill some of the beefier level 1s, and at the same time it's going to make her very easy for your opponent to run her over. Fixing the offense issue is much easier than trying to maintain her on defense, especially when her climax combo is free guaranteed advantage. I'd rather just play for recursion and comboing over and over to maintain advantage rather than try to keep her alive. So, in order to play for more offensive power, I decided to run a 3-2 Misaki package. This gives me access to a 1-1 Michelle 1500 support, allowing Mashiros in front of her to reach 7500 power on offense with climax, and plus 500 if I have a Rimi Brainstorm, for a very respectable 8k power. Additionally, The Misaki 1-0 is a pretty respectable beater herself, reaching 7k on third attack, 8k with a climax, even reaching 9.5k when in front of a Michelle support as well, potentially even contesting some 2-2s or early plays. The Misaki package also gives me access to one of my all-time favorite plays in Weiss, which is paying out a dirty stock and then replacing it with a clean stock at some point. So plays like Amagi with a stock soul climax, I really like being able to do this play. This package in particular allows me to pay one stock early game, potentially paying out a climax, and then in the end game, if I'm short one stock for a finisher play, and I find that I don't need the extra power to get my Yukino reverse, I can just send the 1-1 to stock, change back into the 1-0, and now I have enough stock to do my play. Another small weakness of Mashiro combo is that the mills are not flexible, so I wanted to add some cards with flexible mill. This brings me to two more new cards from the Morphonica trial deck, 0-0 Tsukushi and Nanami. Tsukushi has an on-death discard 1 top check up to 4 from the top of the deck, and add a level 1 or higher card from among them. In addition to giving the deck flexible mill options, it can also grab the 1-0 Mashiro event. If you grab the event off of her effect, this effectively makes the range of cards that you could get off of the Tsukushi's effect way bigger, since it converts the top check 4 add 1 into waiting room access. She can also be used to grab the stock swap event, which I run 2 of. The other new card from the trial deck is the 0-0 Nanami, who has Assist 500 and an act ability, pay 1, sack herself, top check 4, add a music character, and send the rest to waiting room. This fills many roles at once, giving on-demand stockout, yellow fix for the Michelle package, flexible mill, and a modest 500 power bump, which can sometimes make the difference. It's a card that you can let sit in your back row, let her assist work for the meantime, and then later on, when you need to, use her top check 4 add 1 ability. Alright. Now let's get back to the full deck list itself, starting from the level 0s. I'm running 2 Sayo Suiciders and 4 Layer Rickies as my plussing 0 slots. Initially, I was reluctant to run both in the same deck, based on my theory, seeing as both cards costing 1 stock can cause them to conflict with each other. But the more I play it, I feel like it can allow you to play more flexibly in the early game based on how the opponent plays. For example, let's say you play Sayo turn 1, and your opponent decides to play their early game slow and just attack once and kill the Sayo. You can use her effect to save herself, and then save Layer for a potential future play, such as on turn 3, since you're not going to have any stock to use her effect on turn 2. However, if the opponent is playing more aggressively, and on their turn 1, they push you to 0-5 or 0-6, you can let the Sayo go, and then instead use that stock for a Layer play to try to set up for your level 1. The reason I run 4 layers is because I want to be able to play it as a mill 2 and level 0 beater, and not feel like I need to hold it in order to use the Ricky effect. Running 4 copies means that I can potentially draw into multiple copies in the early game and play them more liberally. Layer is also a big contributor to the deck's mill power throughout the whole game, since she mills 2 on play for free. Since I'm only running 2 Sayo Suiciders, obviously at only 2 copies you're not going to see it every game in your opening hand, but I wanted to invest more slots into other zeros that have more lasting utility, such as the Tsukushis. For this next Brainstorm, I felt like Rimi Brainstorm was a pretty obvious choice. Whenever you're playing a level 1 combo that likes to mill down to the end of your first deck, in my opinion, you pretty much always want to salvage Brainstorm, assuming it's available in your set. The reason for this is once your opponent runs your combos over, you will have refreshed your deck, and your climax combos will fall into the waiting room, and you can use your salvage Brainstorm to get them back. In this deck, the same principle applies to the Mashiro event, so if you hold it in your hand through your refresh, once your Mashiros go to waiting room, you can pick them back up using the event. The Rimi Brainstorms also act as a little bit of red fix for your stock swap event and 3-2 Cosmi later on. Cosmi Drop Search is a very simple card. She has on-play top check 2 rearrange, and she's also a drop searcher for music trait. This is a pretty good chump play in the mid game when you want to try to confirm clean triggers off of her top check 2, and sometimes the drop search comes in handy, like maybe you top check 2, see 2 climaxes, and you need a get me out button, but honestly, I almost never use it. It's also another red card for color fix. The reason I only run 1 Cosmi Drop Search is because it's pretty easy to have access to it between the 1-0 Mashiro combo, the 1-0 event, and your Brainstorm. You never really need to have more than 1 at a time either, so as long as the 1 copy is sitting in your waiting room, you can pretty easily access it. This next card, 0-0 Misaki, this is actually such a good card. I threw it in here as a random yellow card for color fix, but this card's actually kind of nuts. So on play, she gives a level 1 or higher character +1 soul, and she has an on attack Shimakai effect. So choose one of your other music characters, and until the end of the turn, it gets 500 times the number of your other music characters. So basically, she can give a 2k buff on attack to one of your other characters. One of my favorite boards in the mid game involving this card at level 2 is this level 0 plus Misaki 1-0 plus Sayo early play. If you have 1-1 Michelle in back row, you can absolutely murder 2 lanes with this setup. Sayo with Resonance is attacking for like 12-5. You use Misaki 0-0 to pump the 1-0, and on third attack, the 1-0 Misaki can attack for 10-5 with 2 soul. And if your other back row is Rimi Brainstorm, you can pump an additional 500. I like salvaging this level 0 Misaki a lot in the mid game. The extra soul is super helpful, especially if you're just playing chump attackers and crashing lanes, building stock towards your end game. And that extra increase in soul output is especially helpful if you don't want to try to clock for climaxes, and it helps you keep up the damage a bit. And lastly, for the level 0s, I run this one of Choo Choo for an on-demand ditch outlet. The Tsukushi level 0 is also costless ditch, but it's also on death, so it's a bit slow, or it can require me to go neg 1 by playing on top of it. And just like the Kasumi drop search, I run the one of so that if you need to toolbox for this card, it's there for you to grab. For the level 1 line, we've pretty much gone over everything already. 4 Mashiros, 4 events. You honestly don't need to run 4 events. You can drop the count a bit, but I feel like because this card is able to convert into other cards so easily at no stock cost, I think it deserves the full 4 slots. And we have the Misaki package, the 3 Misakis and the 2 Michelles, which I talked about earlier. For level 2s, I'm only running 2 stock swap, no supports, since the Michelles basically cover my support needs, as I mostly care about the offensive power in this build as opposed to the defensive, and no counters for the same reason. For level 3s, first off, with our early plays, I'm running 2 Sayo early plays. 4 more music characters on board, you can early play her, draw 2 ditch 1. She's especially good in this deck by allowing you to draw into not only Yuki in a pants for the end game if you don't have it already, but also being able to draw into 1-0 vents, allow you to continue toolboxing whatever you need for the end game. For actual level 3s, of course we have our 4 Yukinas, strong a finisher as ever, but now she has a new best friend in the Mashiro level 3s from the trial deck. So first, we have the Michiru Mashiro with 10-5 base power, kind of weird number, but anyways, her effect's quite strong. On attack, pay 1, discard 1, and Michiru for 3, which is a very nice supplemental finisher with your Yukina combo. This also gives you a nice alternative endgame in case your opponent is desperately playing around Yukina, chumping their board left and right, leaving only like runners on board and denying your reverse. She's also a damage scry, which makes her a pretty good play if you get hit to like 3-0 while your opponent is still at 2 and you aren't committing Yukinas yet and you just want something that can help you stay alive. The other Mashiro 3 is an absolute must-have for Yukina. I remember when I first opened the trial decks and I read this card, I was like freaking out because this is exactly what I wanted for my deck. When she's placed on stage from hand, draw up to 1 card and then choose one of your opponent's characters, and your opponent cannot use counters for that card's attack until the end of the turn. This is such a good card to help Yukina guarantee her reverses, and it's also the reason that I don't run the Saya 2-1 support anymore. Additionally, this Mashiro also changes at Climax phase into the other 3-2 Mashiro for free, which is amazing. You can play her for her draw 1 and anti-counter, and then immediately change her into the other Mashiro. It's just such a good card. Against decks with very defensive counter-based endgames, with money counters, heal counters, things like that, you can go for an endgame like Yukina, one of this Mashiro to guarantee the Yukina reverse, and then she changes into the other Mashiro to help contribute to the finisher play, and a TD Kasumi for the top check burn. This gives you your 3 attacks for the turn, 2 of which are uncounterable, a top check burn 1 from Kasumi, assuming you hit the top check, Michiru, mill the bottom 3 and potentially burn there, and 2 burn 2s from Yukina. And this can be done with only 7 starting stock and 6 hand after clocking. So you can have 4 hand at start of turn, draw up to 5, clock, and go up to 6, and then you can do this entire play from there. You can even throw a stock swap into the mix for 1 extra stock and 1 extra hand if the situation calls for it. So for some cards, I chose not to run. The ones that I've had pointed out the most by some of my friends where I asked their opinion were Toilet Event, 1-0 Saya, 1-0 Rimi, and Saya early play. So I'm going to tackle each of those one by one. While I think Toilet is a powerful card, the consistency of the card just drops into the floor the more events you're running, and I'm already running 6 events. Decks running Tai level 1 can get away with running a higher event count with Toilet because the Tai combo gives you much higher consistency in hitting the Toilet top check, since you can rig it using the Climax combo. Other decks that used to run like 9 or 10 events with Toilets, I'm going to be honest, I have no clue how they did that, because honestly, if I ran a deck like that, I'd whiff so many top checks and I'd just tilt out of my mind. I also don't feel like the stock is very much of an issue in this deck in terms of justifying Toilet. With the Mashiro event having 0 stock cost and being able to toolbox for free with that event as well as the Mashiro combo, you can save a lot of stock that you would otherwise need to spend on costed utility. 1-0 Saya was actually a card that I ran in previous iterations of these Mashiro builds, and I decided to drop it to see if the deck could perform consistently at level 1 without it. And honestly, it's doing just fine, so I think dropping the Saya was an okay choice. Additionally, removing the Saya from the deck allowed me to put in the Michelle package, which ultimately increased the power level of my level 1 line, and using Saya, because of how small she is, it was making it pretty hard to contest my opponent's boards. So the consistency is still here, but the power level has gone up, so yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with the change. Next up, we have the 1-0 Rimi. To be completely honest, this card should probably be in the deck, since this card is very strong with Yukina in that it allows you to move your board around in a way that guarantees that you're able to get Yukina reverses at level 3. I feel like with Mashiro as an alternative endgame, it's not as needed as it used to be, but I could definitely see this getting slotted as a one of, and you cut like 1 copy of the 1-0 event. And lastly, we have the Saya early play. So I value the Sayo early play higher in this deck as it allows for better hand sculpting into the endgame, being able to draw into climaxes, being able to draw into 1-0 events. Recently, I've been starting to feel like a deck's reliance on early play healers is inversely proportional to the strength of its endgame. So like decks with weaker endgames will have more reliance on healing since the game is bound to get dragged on longer. That's just my theory though. I can go more in depth on that in a separate video if you guys would like. Let me know down in the comments. But yeah, also trying to play Saya early play with Sayo early play in the same deck is not great either in my opinion, as their early play conditions clash with each other, both of them being 4 or more music characters early plays. So that concludes my deck profile on my Mashiro Yukina deck. This deck is bound to change a lot with the upcoming extra boosters. We've already seen some really strong cards from the reveals that just happened, such as the Climax Swapper, the Clean Cut, the Choo Choo early play, and I'm super excited to try these cards out in future testing. But yeah, in terms of right now, I've been having a lot of fun theory crafting and testing this deck with the new Morphonica cards, especially after taking such a long break from Weiss. If you guys have any feedback, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below, and until next time, this has been Shizukats. Bye!